Reset stones are a very useful resource, but also hard to use properly. We don't get them too frequently, so it's important to make sure that you're using them to their max potential. I'll be going over how to get reset stones, their general value, basic guidelines for resetting gear, and then some pieces I've reset before as examples. Reset stones let you revert a gear back to its base substats. You don't get any of the materials used to enhance the gear back, whether it's gold, charms, or reforging materials. There's also no option to gold back to the old piece if you don't like your new one as much. So be very careful when you're using them. Any gear that has had a substat modified can't be reset, and you can only reset one piece of gear 5 times. There are also different types of reset stones. These blue ones can be used on level 85 or level 90 gear, which we can see here. And then the purple ones can be used on level 88 gear. And then these ones with the hammer icon on them can be used on swords, helmets, chest pieces, and boots, while the ones with the sticks on them can be used on necklaces and rings. For the free sources of reset stones, Ancient Inheritance, also known as AI, comes around about once every 3 months, and there is a level 88 equipment reset stone available in its shop. And then there's Rift, which this is only the second Rift, so we don't have a great sample size on its duration yet. I'd estimate about 6 months, but it could really be anything. Each time Rift changes season, there will be a level 85 equipment reset stone available at the end of its season pass. Any side stories with limited banners attached to it also typically have reset stones available in their rewards. The most recent one would be the summer event with Festavita and Frida. This had a level 85 reset stone chest available in its reputation missions. Chests let you select either an equipment or an accessory charm, whichever one you prefer. Smallgate also hands out reset stones during major events. The main one I can think of is the anniversary in the Epic Dash at the end of week 1. There's 4 level 85 reset stone selector chests here, and there's also 4 more at the end of week 5. And then during the check-in event for the anniversary, there was also 1 level 85 equipment reset stone and 1 level 85 accessory reset stone. So those are all of the free sources. There's also the Skystone cost options. Whenever Huge Shop comes around, he'll have one of each reset stone available in his shop. Also, there is the Equipment Epic Pass, which will have a chest at the end with 2 level 88 reset stone chests, which let you select either an equipment or an accessory reset stone. I'll go over whether the Huge Stones and the Epic Pass stones are worth the Skystone cost in a bit. And lastly, there's the whale option, which is paid packs that contain reset stones. These aren't too frequent either. The most recent one I could think of was the New Moon Luna packs, which did have reset stones available in the Mystic packs. So these obviously aren't too frequent. The anniversary is giving us a massive boost in the amount of reset stones that we have, but normally you shouldn't expect to be getting enough of them to just reset whatever gear you want. So you do want to make sure that you're using these carefully. Now let's go over the Skystone costs. Huge sells a level 85 equipment reset stone for 1200 Skystones, a level 85 accessory stone for 1400, a level 88 equipment stone for 1600, and a level 88 accessory stone for 1800. Before you even think about buying these, there's a couple things you need to consider. First up is, how are your bookmarks looking? You can expect about 70 Skystones per cup roll and 270 per mystic roll if you're rolling in the secret shop. And if your bookmark counts are looking low, and there's upcoming limiteds or a ML unit that you want, then you probably want to skip these reset stones. Also, if you're somebody who focuses on summoning way more than you focus on gear, like you would never consider burning energy for, or burning Skystones for extra energy or anything, these reset stones probably also aren't worth it for you. So the way I look at it is that when you buy a reset stone, you are essentially buying a brand new piece at +0 for that Skystone cost, but with the extra condition that you have to destroy the original piece of gear. So Huge also sells equipment here, where it's 1100 SS to buy a piece, and this is RNG. Usually I don't really get anything, but it's kind of similar where you're buying a piece directly for Skystones. So let's ignore the part where you have to destroy the original piece, because let's just say that you are rerolling a piece that rolled so low that you don't care about keeping it. If you aren't willing to pay however much the reset stone costs in Skystones for the piece at +0, then these reset stones aren't worth their Skystone cost. The Equipment Epic Pass sells you 2 level 88 reset stone chests. You do need to buy the 900 SS tier before you can unlock the reset stones, but since this 900 Skystone tier is good value by itself, I don't count it in the cost of the special chest, and the reset stones will just be 1600 Skystones. Also, I do not count these equipment selection chests in the value for the special upgrade because these are almost always complete trash and just 0 value. So overall, it's just 1600 Skystones for 2 selection chests or 800 per selection chest. This is much cheaper than the huge shop ones, over half off for the equipment stones and an even larger discount for the accessory ones. The same idea applies though. If you're not willing to spend 800 Skystones for a piece of gear, then these aren't worth it for you. And now for the most important question. What gear pieces are worth resetting? There's some basic rules that you're going to want to follow. First, you need to be willing to lose the piece, because like I mentioned earlier, this isn't exactly like buying a new piece of gear. You have to destroy the original piece first, and then you get a new copy at base for you to roll on. We reset gear because we want to chase the potential of having it roll much higher than what it did originally, but there's also the chance that it rolls worse, which you'll see in the examples later. So make sure that you're willing to take the risk of ending up with a worse piece. Also, you need to think about, if I reset this piece, how usable is it already versus the upgrade that I'm chasing? Maybe the piece is already plenty good as is, like this helmet here. Not counting in the base rolls, the 5 rolls that I hit were pretty much exactly mid. And this piece is already pretty good as is. I don't feel a need to reset it because it's working fine. And I'm chasing something that is a pretty marginal upgrade in my opinion, when I already got pretty lucky on this. So those are things you're going to have to consider. Also, the next rule is that it needs to be a piece with high base rolls. This completely eliminates heroic gear, because heroic gear starts down an entire roll compared to red gear, so don't reset any gear that isn't red. I also don't like using equipment score to evaluate how well rolled the gear is at base, because equipment score is a little bit flawed. Speed, crit chance, and crit damage all inflated a little bit, so it can be misleading. We can see here for these 88 boots, these boots here, these 4 here, these 3, and this one, all of these start with max base subs. This one's 41, and these are all 41, and then these are 42. This is because this one has speed on it, and this one has both crit chance and crit damage on it. This one only has crit chance, so it's 41, and then these all don't have speed, so there are also 41. So you can see the inflation in equipment score based off of these boots, even though they're all technically max base subs. So that's why I don't use equipment score. I instead just look at roll ranges. You can see roll ranges for gears in this table here, which I'll have linked in the description. And you should just check how far away you are from max rolls. Also, there is something that I like to call the flat tacks, because some pieces of gear, especially on right sides, have flat stats as their optimal rolls. If I can find my RB boots here, this is a pure DPS boot. Speed is the main stat, and then there's attack percent, crit chance, crit damage, and these are the best DPS stats, right? Speed, attack percent, crit chance, crit damage, but there's still one slot left, which is just going to be flat attack, gives them the most damage. This flat attack is probably 4 to 5 gear score, or equipment score, and that makes my equipment score below 95, or if you're converting it to gear score, this is about 69 gear score. People like to say that 70 is good. Does this mean that this is a bad piece? No, because I am paying the flat tax. If this flat was HP percent, I could mod this to HP percent, have it be max roll, be 9, and I would gain, let's say, 4 gear score, and suddenly it's 99 equipment score, 73 gear score, and it passes the arbitrary threshold for being a good piece of gear, but it would be a worse piece of gear overall because attack or flat attack gives me the most damage. So make sure that when you're evaluating gear, that you factor in that feature of flat stats. This can also be avoided if you just simply look at roll ranges, because as long as you know which pieces of gear are going to have flats on them, then you can just say, well, this is high roll, this is max roll, this is high roll, and you can just ignore the equipment score completely. And then whether or not flat stats are good on a piece to reset, I'll go over in a little bit. One more thing is 85 versus 88 gears have a bit different standards for what is an acceptable base stats in my opinion. Since these 85 gears are gear that we farm ourselves, you not gonna too frequently come across gear that has max base stats. I've got a couple of lucky pieces here myself. This is 4 max stats. There should also be a destruction helmet here. Yeah, this is also 4 max stats. But then some of the other pieces that I've reset aren't maxed. Like these counter boots that... This one I've reset. This is max, 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 2 off max. It's not easy to get max base gear, so it's definitely fine to reset some gear pieces that are a few percent below max. That is for 85s and 90s. For 88s, however, I think that you shouldn't reset any gear pieces that aren't completely maxed. This is because of Ancient Inheritance. Ancient Inheritance hands out so much max-based gear. Like these are all maxed. These are all maxed. This is Abyss. Then these are all from Ancient Inheritance. These are all maxed. So Ancient Inheritance is by far and away the best pieces of gear to reset for 88s. One other thing is that for 88 gears that come from Ancient Inheritance, they come with 5 speed as a base roll, even though 5 speed is typically not really existent because of its really low chance to obtain. So that is one more thing that you need to look at for 88 gears. For 85 gears or 90 gears, just pretend the 5 speed doesn't exist. 4 speed is the max base roll. I said that AI pieces are the best resets for 88s, which is true, but not all AI pieces are worth resetting, which brings us to the next requirement. The piece needs to have good substat and set synergy to be worth resetting. We can take a look at the AI pieces from the most recent one, and let's talk about how good these are for resetting. So this helmet is a bruiser piece. It works on any attack scaling bruiser, especially ones that don't need crit chance, since there's no crit chance here. I'd say this isn't a DPS piece because it's missing crit chance, and you don't want to substat mod on 88s. So this is a bruiser piece. This chest is a perfect DPS piece because chests can't have attack, which means that you have the 3 only DPS subs on here, and if you hit HP, it would be a bruiser piece. The necklace and the ring are the same. These are DPS or bruiser pieces. Ideally on a DPS piece, this health will be swapped out for flat attack, but even if you dodge HP completely, I wouldn't mod flats because you don't want to mod flat, or you don't want to substat mod on 88s if you can help it. And then Destruction set is good for DPS and bruisers. So with this set and substat combo, no matter how you roll on these in terms of which lines you hit, it'll be usable, and I would only reset these if they low roll. And now we can look at the sword and the boots. For these two, you've got 3 substats that are perfect for units that use effect resistance. The sword is the same because you can't have defense on a sword. And then on both of these, the effectiveness is a little bit out of place. Ideally, you would have flat HP here, but understandably, Smallgate doesn't like handing out flat stats on pieces because most people would probably just get mad instead. F and F-res is usable, but it's not really a high priority substat combo that you're looking after. And then mostly res set you want to use on F-res stackers, so you'd kind of want to hit F-res a bunch because HP set gives you the same amount of stats as resistance set, while also just being a better set in terms of its flexibility because it can be used on much more units than res set. So with that in mind, because you want to ideally dodge effectiveness, and because of the set being kind of low value if you're not hard stacking effect resistance, I wouldn't reset these, even if they low roll a ton. Now we can take a look at an even more obvious example. This is the necklace from Abyss on lifesteal set, with attack percent main, and then HP, speed, crit chance, effectiveness. So an attack percent main is already kind of awkward. This is usually only really used on burn units or units that can't crit. And units that can't crit don't need crit chance really. Burn units can use the effectiveness, speed, and HP, but they generally don't want the crit chance. And then it's also on lifesteal set, which is awkward because burn units deal all of their damage through the DOTs, which you can't lifesteal from. I think the only unit that's ever really used a lifesteal necklace that's attack percent main is Senya, and even she wouldn't really get full effectiveness out of the crit chance. So this is a really awkward piece, and this is definitely not worth resetting no matter how it rolled. This piece usually would just be in storage. And then, do I have the ring? Nope, that's in storage. But that ring is also similarly bad. But when you're resetting gear, like with the helm and with the sword and the boots that I mentioned for the rest set, you're gonna have a bad substat there sometimes, and especially on the 85 and 90 gear, because with 88 gear you can be a bit more picky since Smilegate hands out so many perfect ones for free. But on the 85 gear, you're not always going to be able to dodge a bad substat, because perfect right side gear for tanks and DPSs typically have one flat stat, like the torrent boot I showed earlier. The speed is best in slot, attack percent, crit chance, crit damage are also best in slot, and then your last slot, if you're going to use it on a DPS, is going to be flat attack. So you would still want to not roll into this, but your last slot would want to be this. But even rolling into this wouldn't kill you, because it still does contribute, right? It's still attack. I usually treat this as like a min roll, or a little bit below a min roll. So if you max rolled into attack, crit chance, and crit damage on 4 of your rolls, and then you hit flat attack on your 5th roll, you could just average it out a bit and say you got 3 max rolls and 2 mid rolls, and that's still a really good piece. So you do ideally want to dodge the flat line, but hitting it isn't the end of the world if you roll really well on the rest of them. But the chance of dodging a single line 5 times in a row while you're enhancing is 23%. So you got a 77% chance to hit that line and a 23% chance to not hit it. And then this is the DPS piece, and let's see if I have any tank examples or if I have to exit this menu. Because I think I might have to exit this menu. Okay. I'm just going to quickly look for one and see if I can find it. Oh, this is a good one. So here, it's HP percent main, and then you've got effective resistance, defense, and speed, which are good for FRS scaling tanks. Or not FRS scaling, just tanks that use effect resistance. And then the last slot, you're not really going to use effect with FRS that much, so you just want flat HP here. And the same thing, 23% chance to dodge this line 5 times, but it did hit, and you can see I've reset this one a few times. So that is one thing you want to factor in. Also, there are tanks that don't use F or FRES, like this one here. So this piece, I did hit defense once, and I don't like resetting these pieces because the odds that you hit these are super high, and it's, like I said, not the end of the world. You treat it as a min roll, but that does make it a bit harder to reset these because odds are you're going to hit one of the flats at least once. Lastly, you want to consider how useful the piece is. Just because a piece of gear has good base rolls and good set plus stat synergy doesn't necessarily mean that it's a highly desired piece. For example, this ring is dropped from Juleave in Nightmare mode, and it's a pretty sick ring. It's got HP percent main with defense percent, speed, crit chance, and crit damage as its subs, which is perfect bruiser gear. This is as good as you can get for HP scaling bruisers. And the set is injury set, which is only ever used on bruisers, so it does synergize with the set as well. However, how useful is this piece? Because who is using this? Right now in the meta, all the units that do injury have injury built directly into their kit. Dastiel Ray, Urban Shadow Shoe, I forgot her name, something Ilanav, the ML form. All of these just have injury in their kit and they don't actually build injury set. So this means that this ring, despite its perfect subs and good main stat and good set, isn't really a piece that's worth resetting. I actually do have one of these that's low rolled pretty badly that we can see here. This is pretty low rolls, but I would never reset this because nobody's using this. However, this is subject to change, of course, because if the meta shifts, and especially with Harsetti resetting soon, releasing soon, who's going to have a pretty major impact on some unit builds, injury set might become usable, or a unit on injury might become usable. So if that changes, then maybe this piece is worth resetting in order to get higher rolls, if we ignore that I have 2 more already that have rolled much better. But percent you only have 1, this piece might be worth resetting if a unit that uses it pops up. But as it stands, this gear is really low priority because even if you roll this perfectly, there aren't any very good users of this. One more thing to take into account is that these equipment reset stones can be used on swords, helms, chests, and boots. And boots of the four are the hardest to get because of their variable main stat. So because of that, you might find boots to be more important to reset than the other pieces. It's still fine to reset other pieces, of course, if they're super, super good. I've reset a few helms myself. It's just another factor to account for when you're deciding what to reset. To summarize, the gear that you reset is going to want very high base rolls, good substat and set synergy, and also you're going to want it to be a pretty useful piece overall. We can take a look at some of the 88 gear in the game to see which ones fill these requirements. I've mentioned it a bunch of times, but Ancient Inheritance gear is generally the best ones. It's got high base rolls and good substat set synergy usually. So these are good ones. You do need to account for how highly desired the stat combo is with the set. But these come at max base, so if you're going to reset 88 gear, it probably should be AI gear. And then there's also gear in Nightmare Raid that is pretty good. Mainly the boss drops, because these bosses do each have a piece that they can drop. Queen has two. I've gone over this ring already from Jewel Leaf. If injury set ever becomes good, this would be a really good piece. This necklace comes from Vera. This is also a decent choice. And then there is these boots from Queen Azumashik, also a good choice. What you don't want to reset is do not reset these shop pieces. That is the wrong shop. Do not reset the shop pieces in Nightmare Raid because these are just... Because you can acquire one of them every month, you can just get a new piece next month, and that is much faster and cheaper than using a reset stone on it. So do not reset the shop pieces. And then also shop pieces is the Conquest Point shop, which has the arena gear, which is now in the battle pass technically, but there's still the old sets here. Anything above this Conquest season is all complete trash because these are fake 88s. These actually roll like 85s. The substats, their roll range is lower than what an actual 88 is, so these are really, really bad, and you should never reset these. You shouldn't reset real 88 arena gear either, because if you look at these are not max. The max is 9 for HP, attack, and FRES. So since we don't get 88 resets that frequently, and we have all that AI gear, don't reset any arena gear at all. We can also look at some of the 88 gear from side stories. It might be easier if I go to the reset menu and look for 88s there. The 88 gear from side stories usually doesn't come at max roll. It's usually a bit less. It's a little hat here. If I put it in here, 888, the max is 9. If this was an 85 and you're like 3 off of max, I think that's fine to reset. But since it's 88 and we have AI gear where Smilegate just gives us maxed stats, I wouldn't reset these side story pieces either. And then this isn't applicable to all people because if you're watching this very far in the future, you might not have this gear. But the Epic Dash does give us some 88s to roll. We get a full pen set and a full speed set, I'm pretty sure. Of these pieces, the only piece that I would really reset is the boots, because these don't come at max either. They're a little bit between the AI gear and the special side story gear, where you can see crit chance is maxed, speed is maxed, HP and attack are 1 off. So it's 2 off max. This ring is the same thing. Health and crit damage are 1% off each. So I would only really look at resetting the boots. These boots here, they are also 1 off on the attack and HP, but it's still pretty close to max, and if you have no other gear to reset for AI pieces, then these can be decent options. One problem with these boots is that you don't really want to hit HP, so you would be playing the 23% to dodge HP and hit these DPS boots. But DPS boots are good, so this is a potential option. Now for the gear that I've reset. I'll say that I'm a little too conservative with my reset stone usage, which is why I have way too many left over, and I still have a bunch in my inventory from selection chests. Though I also generally just lean towards hoarding things anyways. You can just use these examples to help you see some of the decision making behind resetting gear. Overall, I don't like resetting gear if it's already usable unless I have a really good reason to. Usable for me is anything above mid-roll, since that's what you should expect on average. Mid-roll is also, it's a little bit higher than the arbitrary cutoff that people use for evaluating gear. Because usually people just say 70 gear score, which is 96 equipment score. And just for anyone who's unaware, equipment score is not the same thing as gear score. Gear score is separate. It's usually equipment score minus 26. And the cutoff is just an arbitrary 70 because it's a nice multiple of 10. Since your base stats are super high, your average gear score is probably more like 73 in that range. It'll be lower if your base stats aren't maxed, of course. And since you're gonna on average roll around mid, you could use that as your cutoff for what you should reset. Thus, you also have to account for stuff like if you have a flat stat, your gear score is going to be a bit lower, even if it's an optimal flat stat, because of the flat stat tax that I mentioned. There's also the high base stats on your gear. Since you only ever reset gear with max or near base stats, even if you roll a little bit lower, you could just settle for the piece, because the high base stats will make up for some of the worst rolls. Also, if you have a stat that you're trying to dodge and you manage to dodge it, you might want to settle for the piece. Like this ring here is hilariously bad. It's 4 min rolls and 1 low roll, but since I managed to dodge defense, I don't reset it, because the odds of me dodging defense again aren't that high, and I can just mod the defense to flat attack or effectiveness and just use it for PvE. And now we can take a look at some of the gear. First up is this torrent ring, which I bought from one of the coin shops. On the first try, it min-rolled speed, hit flat attack twice, and min-rolled crit damage twice. Usually, I treat flat rolls as a min-roll, so that's basically 3 min-rolls and 2 mid-rolls. Not great, so I reset it, where once again I ended up with 3 min-rolls and 2 mid-rolls. So I reset it again, and I get 2 max rolls into speed, 2 max rolls into crit damage, and a flat attack roll. This is an insane piece, even with the flat attack roll, so this is an easy choice to keep. Now let's look at a piece where it would have been reasonable to not reset. This conversion helm came with maxed out subs, and I got 1 mid-roll, 2 min-rolls, and 2 max rolls. So overall, it rolled right down the middle, exactly average. This piece is still really good though, even with the average rolls, because of the high base stats. So this is already a usable piece, and this is something that you don't have to reset. You could if you want to chase higher stats, but you also have to account for the fact that it could roll worse. I took the risk and reset it, and I ended up with 2 max rolls and 3 mid rolls. I'm more likely to make this piece worse rather than better at this point if I reset this, so I just kept the piece. We can also take a look at the worst reset I've ever done. I only have pics of the second to last and the last boot, but this is the 88 boot from Nightmare Queen, and it's a pretty good tank boot. It's got perfect substats. This boot started out with 95 ES before I did my first reset, which is below average rolls, since average should be 97, and every single reset attempt rolled lower than that. It's a bit hard to say that I shouldn't have reset it because the initial boot was already below average, but this is just an example of how resetting cannot work out sometimes. I ended up with a worse boot than I started with, and I'm down 5 reset stones, gold, as well as EXP. These boots are an example of where I have to dodge a substat for the piece to be good. Attack percent, crit chance, and crit damage are all maxed, but this flat defense roll is completely useless. I decided to take the 23% chance since this boot isn't really usable anyways, and I ended up with 2 min-rolls in the crit damage and 3 mid-rolls in the crit chance. These rolls aren't great, but because of the odds of me dodging flat attack are low in the first place, I kept this piece and I modded the flat defense to flat attack. Keep in mind this piece pays the flat stat tax, so the ES of the piece is a little bit lower, and you can see that the high base rolls, even with not or below average rolls, I had 2 min-rolls in the crit damage. The overall equipment score of this piece is still pretty high. This HP neck is a bit more complicated, so I actually think this piece was a mistake for me to reset. I reset it at plus 12, but on a piece like this, ideally you would dodge F-Res, because right now there's a lot of meta tanks that don't use F and don't use effect resistance, Blood Moon Haste, ML Senya, ML Tywin, and Laya. So I should have done the final enhance to try to dodge effect resistance. Even though I hit flat HP twice, it would have been fine as long as I dodged F-Res. I reset to chase some higher rolls, and after 4 resets, I ended up with 1 max roll into speed and 4 high rolls into effect resistance. I only have 1 reset left at this point, and this rolled super high, so I'm just keeping it as is. I think the overall usability of this piece is lower, even though I high rolled it, just with the way the current meta is. So resetting was probably a mistake, and I should have tried the dodge effect resistance, but this is a super high gear score piece anyway, so it should be usable on somebody eventually, and I'm definitely fine with how it ended up. I'd say those examples cover pretty much everything about resetting, but I'll quickly go through the rest of the pieces that I've reset anyways. This pen ring had 3 min rolls and a low roll at plus 12, and so since even though the base stats aren't maxed, I opted to reset it because that's pretty bad. I ended up with mid rolls, but I only hit DPS stats, so I kept the piece. I also have the option of modding the def percent for flat attack or higher def percent roll if I want to use this on a unit that needs a little bit of bulk. This other pen ring had 2 mid rolls, 1 low roll, and 2 min rolls. After a reset, I ended up with high rolls overall. Since the crit chance isn't maxed, I can safely mod it to def percent for an auto crit unit without losing any stats because I could mod it back to crit chance and still get 5%. This is also because crit chance on substat mods has the unique factor where it's not maxed for some reason while every other stat is. I can't reset this piece anymore because I substat modded it, but I have no reason to anyways. All the rest of these pieces, I don't have pics of their original rolls because I didn't have the foresight starting from over a year ago to track all of my resets, but we can go through them anyways. This pen helm here, if I can find it, it's a pen 90 helm. This pen helm here started off with, I don't remember what it started off with. I remember the start was a little bit below average, and then I reset it once, and now it's exactly mid-rolled. So I could roll this and chase higher stats. It's still just mid-rolled. There's only 1 reset done so far, but I've been getting really good usage out of this as is. Me dodging the speed is actually really nice, because I can use this on units like ML Bologna, also Ravi, some of the slower units that are guaranteed to crit. So I haven't reset it anymore because I haven't really felt the need to. And then there's also these counter boots. So these counter boots are obviously, I'm not using them. I was put this on my Angelica for AI. This one, the crit damage isn't maxed. So this is pretty good rolls overall. And when I reset it, it was around mid-roll. So even though I don't know who I'm using this on, because I rolled super well, I'm just going to keep it as is. This is one of those things where I probably shouldn't have reset this in the first place, honestly, because I didn't know who I was using it on. Or I guess I think I reset it for Shu. But Shu's not that used right now, so there's no user for this. So there's also no reason for me to reset it because I don't know who would use this even if I rolled higher. And then there is this torrent neck from the most recent AI. I think this was 2 AIs ago, actually, where I reset this 4 times already because I kept on low rolling it. And with a neck like this, and with this set, if I dodge defense at any point, I was going to keep this. And also with the more recent Torrent Candy build, if I dodged speed at any point, I would have kept it. But that never happened. I always hit defense and speed. But here, 4 resets in, I've only got 1 reset left, and this rolled super high, so not worth taking the risk of making it worse. And even though I have no idea who is using this, it high rolled, so we're just going to keep it. And that's pretty much it for the Reset Stone guide. We've been getting a lot of Reset Stones and a lot of high base gear from this anniversary. Reset Stones from the Epic Dash and logins, and all of the otherworldly chests from Rift is what's giving us our high base gear. So if you're watching this in the future, then all of the stuff in the video will still apply to you, even though you don't have the things that I just mentioned, because this is covering the overall ideas of resetting gear.